Hello, everyone. Welcome to our workshop today on using AI components with NITRO Studio. As always, my name is James Restivo with Crow Canyon Software. As I like to do, would like to give a couple minutes for folks to pile in and join on to the webinar. Looks like we got a couple more joining right now. A few folks that have been to a few of these before. Good to see you again. Welcome back. Appreciate your continued attendance at these workshops, and hopefully you're learning more about what NITRO Studio can do, and that's really what these workshops are about. It's about teaching you what NITRO has in it that is maybe beyond what you've already experienced or already worked with the program. So appreciate that. Looks like about a minute in. I think we got everyone who's going to be on. Maybe a few people join late. That's okay. We'll catch them up. As usual, there is a questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. Feel free to pop a question in there at any point in time. We also accept comments and any feedback that you want to put in there. That's all welcome material to put in that questions box. Okay, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get right into it. And you should be seeing my screen using AI components with NITRO Studio. So I'm using Sway, which is, I like better than PowerPoint, but anyway, that's what this is all about, Microsoft thing. So what we're going to talk about are what AI components are there that we leverage or can connect to. And a lot of it is based on Azure Cognitive Services, which you may be aware of. And we're using those, kind of the framework that Azure is providing to give you some level of artificial intelligence and natural language processing in components of NITRO. Now, some of it does require the bot, which is usually an additional license. So if you're interested in learning more about the bot, let us know. I will be talking about the bot at the end of the call as well. There will be some demo of it, but it is a really cool way to engage with your users and get their information as far as what kind of tickets they're submitting or presenting information to them with a knowledge-based search. And we'll talk about all that as we go through this workshop today. We're going to be looking at this outline of content. We're going to talk about this thing called LUIS application. This is language understanding. It is another service by Microsoft, part of the Azure Cognitive Services framework. And we'll talk about that. We're going to just demystify setting up the LUIS app a little bit and kind of show you what that looks like to set it up, what you need to have in place ahead of time. I'm going to give you a little crash course in what utterances, entities, and intents are all about. It sounds daunting, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's just basically what do people say? What would they actually use as a phrase in the bot or whatever services you're providing? But we'll talk more about that. And then we'll dive into how we're using natural language processing. And then we'll also dive into the email sentiment analysis, which is using a little different part of the Azure Cognitive Services framework than the language understanding, but similar. And then we're going to be talking about the NITRO bot and how you can connect up that LUIS application with the NITRO bot, and that's going to give you the power for searching knowledge bases and utilizing that service. So what we're going to talk about first is setting up this LUIS application. It's really not that daunting once you get into it, but there are a couple things you're going to need to set up ahead of time if you don't have them already. So, this is a LUIS.ai is a website that is out there that Microsoft offers. You can go to LUIS.ai and you'll see all about it. I'm going to also pop it up. I've logged in a couple locations here as well. And but you should see this landing page when you go to LUIS.ai, then you sign in and you'll get the screen I just popped up briefly, but we'll dig into that in a little more. To set up a LUIS application, you are going to need an Azure subscription. So just because you're using Azure AD doesn't mean you have an Azure specific subscription. There can be costs associated with that depending on how heavily you use the Azure subscription, but it is something you would need to set up to engage with the LUIS application. Within that subscription, you're going to need to create an Azure resource group, and that the Azure resource group is essentially just a way to box up or put together multiple resources in Azure into one group, kind of like a SharePoint group has multiple users, or AD security group has multiple users or entities. The resource group is kind of the same concept where you're grouping up your Azure resources into one place. You can have multiple Azure groups, and it just gives you a way to manage your Azure resources in a way that makes sense for you. But you do have to have an Azure resource group in order to create the authoring resource, which is part of what you would create when you're creating the Lewis application. So the authoring resource has to be part of this resource group. And so essentially you got to create both those things ahead of time. And it's also helpful, if not necessary, to have a prediction resource on the subscription as well. And there's information. You can see I have a couple links here to go out to those resources. I'll make sure they're included in the email that goes out after the workshop today to have those resources. A lot of it's Microsoft documentation. If I right click and hit open a new tab, you'll see there's a managed resource group. It's one of these used to be TechNet, I guess it's just Docs now for a resource, but it has all the information from Microsoft and how to use those resources. So I won't go through it in detail, but it's there for you to refer to if you want to talk, learn more about what a resource group is all about, how to set up, how to use it. You'll have that right in front of you. And so we create that prediction resource as well. And then finally, we can go in and set up our Lewis application. Now, really the only thing you need to set up ahead of time is that subscription and resource group. The authoring resource can be created as part of creating the Lewis app. Now I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm actually going to pop over to another browser here where we don't have that authoring resource. And we actually don't even have the subscription on here, but I'll just kind of show you what's going to look like for you potentially getting started with this stuff if you don't have those resources available. So we're going to create an authoring resource, and here's where you're going to see your directory. So that directory is going to be local to your, your company. Your Azure subscription, we do have one here, but there is, it could be other Azure subscriptions, or maybe there's none. That's where you'd have to go and set that up ahead of time. And then you have your authoring resource. So again, that would have to be set up, either set up ahead of time, or you can hit the create new authoring resource right from that link. And then we go over to that, you got your Azure subscription already populated. Your group, you have to identify that group. And then you're going to give it some name, whatever resource name you want to call it. And that's going to be your authoring resource. So you just call it, default authoring, whatever you want to call it. Location is going to be different locations for Azure setups. So if you want to keep it local to where you're at, this actually could be coming from, I don't think it's coming from our tenant. I don't think we do anything in Switzerland, but you're going to have some options here. I think that is based on your subscription and what you have access to through that subscription. So if you need to keep everything in the US, there's obviously you choose the US location. If you're located in a different country, you choose a different country location. Basically, whatever you have set up for your resource, your subscription would appear there, and you can pick it. And then your pricing tier is always going to be this F0 free tier that they have. So insofar they haven't, they're not forcing us to pay for this stuff yet. But there is they being Microsoft, but there's a minimal cost if you have something like 10,000 interactions with the Lewis app, which is basically essentially a user types in something in the bot communicates with Lewis, that counts as an interaction, and you gotta have like 10,000 of those a month before you start tripping over into any kind of payment situation. That information, also the payment stuff, that you can look up on just Google it or look it up on Bing or whatever. If anyone actually uses Bing, you can look it up and find out what those payment tiers are. It's not that unless you're a larger organization using it heavily, it's probably not going to come into play as far as payment. And essentially, once you get all this stuff figured out, entered in here, you hit done, it's going to create your authoring resource. Then within that authoring resource, you can create your Lewis app. Now, let me pop over to a place where we already have those things set up. And that's going to be on this demo here. I'm not going to dig into some of the stuff too much because it is using our subscription, and I'm not going to share any of those like GUIDs or URLs, but I'll show you what I can. And what I can show you here is that if I want to create a new app, you can see where I have a few created. If I want to go ahead and create a new app here, give it a name, and we do something like demo app, and give it a culture. So culture is going to help the Lewis app understand what language am I supposed to be looking for here. Also colloquially, if it's if you're in the UK, or if from Brazil and using Portuguese, that's a little slightly different flavor to it than using regular Portuguese. And same with the English in the UK is going to be a little different than English in America. So you're going to have that differentiation there. So you have these different cultures that you can choose, and it's important to choose the right one. I mean, obviously, if most I think most of the people on this call are from US, so you're pretty much always going to be choosing the English. But if you have different, let's say you have a resource in a different part of the world that you want to build an app around their language, you can set that culture in here for what it's going to understand. So essentially, it's going to be looking for that language and processing things in that language and in that region as well. And then we got our, so then we give it a description, and that'll help you remember what it is. And then you got your, here's that prediction resource we've already created. So we connect that up and just hit done. That's going to create a new app. Now, once you create that app, it's going to look like this. We'll give it a name over here. And it's basically going to be a blank slate for you to build from. So now you have this kind of blank slate. There's always going to be this none intent. And let me talk a little bit about intents, entities, and utterances. So that's kind of what drives the Lewis application is intents, entities, and utterances. Utterances are really, very simply put, what people are going to say. It's going to be what people put into the bot or put into the application. So essentially the Lewis app is a app that's taking some kind of input, and that's going to be a phrase like I need help with my ticket, or I need to I need to buy a new printer, or I need to buy a new cell phone. Those kinds of things could be inputs. Those are the utterances. And once that gets input into the Lewis app is going to read that, and based on what you have set up here with intents and entities, it's going to return something. So it's going to return something with a confidence value of like, I think they're asking about printers. I think they're asking about purchasing a cell phone. And that's going to return back to your application. In this case, we consume this with our NITRO bot, but you could also consume this with some other application that takes it and knows what to do with it based on the confidence of the Lewis app returning that information. Now, how you get there, and how you build those phrases, how you build those intents and entities and whatnot. It's really over time. Like you might have some things you want to pre-build and some, here's what people are asking about. You kind of know what they're asking about already. You can create those utterances. You can create those intents and entities. But essentially, it also can be managed over time to be better. And so this is where you're kind of making that interface or the interaction with the Lewis app better over time by adding, increasing what utterances are there and also what they map to as far as entities and whatnot. Now let's talk a little bit about these entities. So entities essentially are where you're going to store your utterances. So, you add new utterances here, and those entities can be what you pull out of it. So an entity could be what you consider like, purchase. So someone says, I need to purchase a cell phone. So the entity you want to pull out of there is purchase and also cell phone. So those are going to be two different entities. And they're going to map to intents of, they want to purchase a cell phone. That intent then can be pushed back to your application and consumed and said, okay, create a purchasing request for a cell phone. So you can get really dig into that and deep into that stuff with that. You're always going to have a none intent, which is basically, I don't know what this person's asking about. I'm just going to return the none because I don't know what they're talking about. So you're always going to have that none intent. But there could be, I think, up to 500 intents, including the none intent, so 499 additional intents. So you can really get kind of really specific about what you want to, what you think the people are going to be asking about and what that returns as a value back to your application that's consuming this information. So, that's going to get a little digging into these entities, intents, and things in some detail. Hopefully, it's making a little sense to you. But they also have these pre-built ones, which might give you some sense of what you're, what we're talking about here. Like age, what could be an entity, and what we mean by that is someone says, let's say I need to book a birthday party for a 10-year-old. Let's say you're some like a bowling alley or something. You want to intake this information on a web form, pass that web form through Lewis, and then return some kind of information back. So you could put intake age, right? For instance, say, I need to schedule a birthday party for my 10-year-old. Age is going to be 10-year-old. That's going to be what you map. The utterance is going to be, I need to schedule a birthday party for my 10-year-old. We're taking that intent of 10-year-old and mapping it to this entity of age. So it kind of maps that way, date, time, email. So there's different things that you can, that are pre-built that you can define as entities that we're pulling back from the whatever the person is saying, the utterance, if you will. And then, so that's the entities, intents kind of piece of this. How we're using this with Nitro, and tying it back to what we're doing with the Nitro side of things. We're leveraging this pre-built entity called key phrase, and what we're doing there, this is one you can put out there if you want to add it in, you can do that. What it's doing is it's taking whatever the person has put into the input area, which could be, like I said, could be web form. In this case, our bot. Let's say they're putting something into our Nitro bot. It says, I need to do something, or I have a problem with this. It's going to take that utterance and find key words in it and basically exclude all the extraneous stuff. It will exclude ands and twos and maybe even the I or whatever. It's going to basically exclude all the kind of common words that don't really mean anything and really focus on the key words that are really, that the person is putting in there. Like, I need to purchase a new cell phone. In this case, the key phrase is probably going to pull back purchase, sell, and phone. Now, how we do that, how our bot takes that information is it's going to take that information and search their knowledge base and pretty much just search the knowledge base or search tickets, and for anything that has purchase, sell, or phone in it, it could pull back that knowledge base article. Now, if you don't use Lewis, if you're not using natural language processing, which is kind of what we're moving towards here with this key phrase entity, if you're not using that and you don't connect the bot up to a Lewis application, which is possible, you'd only be getting back results that say specifically what that person entered. If they're putting the string, I need to purchase a new cell phone, it's going to take that literal string and try to search for that in your knowledge base. So if you don't have any KB articles that say, I need to purchase a new cell phone as an explicit string of text in that KB article, you're not going to get any results. So the way this enhances what you're doing with the knowledge base search is it's taking those keywords and searching just on those keywords in the knowledge base list or whatever you're searching. Essentially, it's going to take those keywords and search for them rather than searching for the whole phrase, which may or may not actually exist. So it gives you another level of ability to dig into what the person is asking about and allows you to pull back information. Now, you can do that with a key phrase entity. If you wanted to add in other entities and return back other information, we can do that, and that's where we can that's actually where these where these categories come into play. We have these different categories here, which are a little more built out. This is, and I'll show you this when we get to the bot setup, that you can actually extract this information from your SharePoint site. If you're using our IT application, we have a JSON file that you can download and upload into here, which it basically takes, what you're seeing right on the screen right now, it's going to build all that stuff up. So now we've got, different things that people could enter. Camp book resource, time zones, meeting setup, whatever it is, we're mapping those essentially to a normalized entity over here, and that's going to help drive what we're actually searching for. So if someone puts in any of this information in the bot, it's going to kick back a calendar and it's going to search for basically search for that calendar category on the knowledge base list and pull back knowledge base articles related to it. So you can kind of see like how this is starting to interact and interplay with what people actually say and what they might actually put into a bot, and how that maps to what you want them to see and consume in the bot as far as knowledge base articles. So we're mapping these things. You can see there's space you can add in your own values. If you have a different situation or you want to delete one of these and add in your own, that's all fine. You can do that. But you'd be managing all that from this Lewis application, and deciding, okay, what are my people actually asking? What are they saying? And then later on, I'll show you with the bot dashboard and bot analytics and how that can help you build this list if you need to modify it or change it. I'll show you, what that looks like with the bot analytics. But that's going to give you feedback on what people are actually inputting into the bot. if they're not getting a result, you'll kind of get that information. If they're not, if it's resolving their problems, okay, that's, we set it up correctly, their problems are getting resolved, and we're good to go. So we'll dig more into that when we get to the bot side of things, but I wanted to give you really this crash course in the Lewis side of things to kind of help you understand how this is operating behind the scenes to intake what people are entering into the bot and then returning something back to the bot that's relevant and useful. So again, there's a lot of documentation out there about how to use these. There's an article about what the pre-built key phrase entity is doing if you want to dig into that in more detail. So you get some more, there's a lot of resources out there to dig into that, but hopefully, I'm scratching the surface to kind of give you a sense of where you can go with this stuff. Anyway, so you get your Lewis application set up, and then we'll connect it over to the bot. And then we talked about, these using utterances and, intents and entities. In here, some examples I put in here of utterances, which is, like I said, exactly the literal text of what people might put in there. You might want to even include punctuation, different types of punctuation, different types of capitalization. So it really could be a wide breadth of options for the utterance, but again, over time, you're going to build up what those most relevant examples would be, and you can get those into there. And this is where I'm talking about that entity can map to an utterance. Entity from the utterance can map to an intent. And so my example here is that someone puts in one of these three phrases. We're pulling out printer as the entity, and then we're pulling back an intent, create ticket to fix printer. So that's now our intent. And then once we send that back to whatever application is consuming this, we can do something with it. Now, like I said, our bot right now is searching knowledge base with the primary words that the person entered, but you could expand on that in other applications to run actions based on what the person has wrote in there. And that's something we're, a place we're going to go with the bot eventually is have more robust functions that can happen from the input in the bot itself. So we will be working more on that, and there's a lot you can do there. So it just, the possibilities are really, they're actually really exciting to me of what you can possibly do with this Lewis application, with this natural language processing. So I did touch on this natural language processing already, and so I won't dig into it again, but that's that key phrase entity, which essentially is saying, pull back, what is this person actually asking? What are they actually saying? And mapping that into a search so that can return a relevant result for them. Now, hopefully that because we're going to come back to this in just a minute, and I'll show you how the bot stuff works. But I want to take you kind of down a little different direction now with cognitive services. So we talked about with cognitive services, we talked about the Lewis application, we talked about using the intents and entities, and I spent some time with that because it was a little complex, and it's not that hard once you wrap your head around it, but it can be a little daunting at first. What is an intent? What is an entity? I want to kind of give you a crash course in that. But kind of a different option, another thing you can do with cognitive services is this sentiment analysis. And so we're using this with our email conversion tool in our help desk to basically say, is this person angry? Is this kind of neutral? Are they really happy? And we're scoring words. Like there's a text analytic cognitive service that Azure offers where you can input the text and it's going to score it based on how many negative words and how many positive words are in that text. So over the course of a whole email, it kind of, it comes to a score of whatever it might be. So if they're, negative words are going to be scored lower. This is a scale of 0 to 1. So that's why you're seeing the 0.3, 0.5, 0.7. So from 0 to 1, 0 being like they absolutely are totally, about to, cancel service, hate everything, hate the company. That's going to be a really negative score, whereas positive would be like, we love it, we want to buy more stuff, or your support's amazing. Those kinds of things will give it a positive score and can range anywhere in between there. And you can actually control what these scores map to if you wanted to change up the values a little bit. But how do we do that? How do we get that into the system? And I'll walk through it. Here kind of at a high level what we're doing with this sentiment analysis. We have this article on our .help site, which if you haven't gone to yet, please do. There's a lot of great information there. There's a community forum you can sign up for. But essentially, there's this sentiment analysis that you can put into your application. So again, this is tying to our kind of out-of-the-box applications that we have for email conversion for IT help desk and a few others. But you could use the same kind of concept in other areas as well, because we do have that email sync tool. You can take the email. It may even be able to parse text. We haven't tried it with text yet, but we have the text synchronization as well that you can put in place. But essentially, we're going to read that email, and the system's going to read that email and let you know if it's what the sentiment is. So if you want to set that up, I won't go through in excruciating detail here, but essentially you got to have a couple different columns. There's a sentiment analysis column that's going to be a plain text column. And then we essentially just put this information into that multi-line plain text column that we just created up here called sentiment analysis. And the API key is going to be what you get from Azure when you set up the cognitive service over there for that text analytics. I mean, and further down, I'll show you. It does show you how to create that text analytics resource in Azure. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So we put that in there. We got our text values here. This is where you can change what they map to. So you can have different things mapping to different values. And then, it's kind of just gives you a walkthrough of what we're talking about in there. And then you can, you see here's the scores where we're saying if it's less than 0.3, it's an angry email. If it's between 0.3 and 0.5, it's a negative email. If it's between 0.5 and 0.6, it's kind of in the middle. And then anything above a 7 is considered positive. Well, you can change the values if you want. And then we have to add a couple more lists here to take that information and say, okay, here's our sentiment score. It's going to be, a number column. And then we have our sentiment value, which is that's going to take the literal value, the string there, the positive, neutral, negative, whatever actually gets returned from that text analytics. It's going to put that into that field. Then ultimately you can take those values and do stuff with them. If you wanted to, here I'll come back to setting up the service in a minute. But ultimately, what happens is you can add those sentiment score, sentiment value fields into your list, and you can kind of see, okay, where does it fall on the scale? Is it angry? Is it positive? Is it you can see here, treat this ticket with high priority, very much dissatisfied. Okay, that's an angry person. Production critical issue, treat with high priority, another angry person. Service is excellent, maps to positive. So you can kind of see how it reads that text of what's coming in and gives you a score based on it. And then because they're SharePoint columns that we're creating here, we can run our NITRO workflows on those to take it a step further. So again, angry, person comes in, they're angry. Now we can immediately escalate that to a person or to another entity, or you can see sentiment value equals angry, then we want to mark it as high priority, or email the manager or whatever it might be. So we can act on those values that come in, and so we're leveraging that text analytics cognitive service to let us know kind of more, without having to read the email. Our systems determine, okay, this person's happy, probably don't have to respond right away. Oh, this person's really upset, we need to get back to them immediately. So it can help drive customer service, customer satisfaction that way. So really helps with that. What this looks like in Azure, I think I have this up over, I don't know if I put this up because it does dig into our Azure tenant in a little bit. I didn't really want to expose a lot of that stuff. But is a service that you can, it's pretty easy to set up. I mean, there's articles about it. I think I have, I think I might have, yeah, but, well, I have this link here, and then in our article here, you can see how you set it up. Here you go. You go to the cognitive services, you get the API key. There's it's basically all free. I mean, it's essentially, until you hit like a certain value, it's going to be all, again, it's all free. It's all based on usage, and it's the way Microsoft's going these days. Not quite going there with SharePoint yet. Maybe they will. Who knows? But it's all based on the usage in Azure. How heavily are you using it? You might incur costs for a lot of things, for a lot of kind of applications. A lot of our applications for it, it's not going to be tripping over into the costing scenario. But in case it does, you can look up those costing options and find out what it is. You can see, oh yeah, here we go, 5,000 transactions per month. Maybe that's changed, but that's where you can get that information about how much you get out of it. So if you're not doing 5,000 emails a month that you're doing analysis on, you probably should be good to go. You're not going to trip over into any paid tier, but it's something to be aware of. You could go into that. But yeah, so that's the email sentiment analysis. So again, it's kind of a different cognitive service than the Lewis app we've been talking about. But it's fairly straightforward. The text analytics in Azure, look it up. It's pretty easy to set up, as you can see here. So, and then if you want a refresher on how to set it up in your particular site, just pop over to this article 442, and it'll kind of walk you through how to do that. Now, I want to come back over here, and from our brief foray into different cognitive servers there. I want to kind of tie this back, everything we've kind of been talking about. I want to tie it back into using the NITRO bot in Teams. So we have this Teams, I guess you could call it a Teams app, if you will. It's basically a Teams app that is operating as a bot in the system. I won't go into, I'll show you it and show you what it looks like. We have a ton of really a ton of videos about how using the bot, what it looks like. And so I won't retread a lot of that ground because we do have a lot of material out there about what the bot does. But I will show you kind of what it looks like, and then I will also show you a couple things on how to connect that Lewis app we're just looking at into the bot, and also I'll show you those bot analytics and administrator dashboards. So first of all, let me jump over to our NITRO Studio here. So in the NITRO apps, if you're using our bot, you'll have this. Well, you'll see the bots link here, and that's going to pop open this NITRO AI Services page, and it's going to give you options for configuring NITRO the bot settings, or the bot commands. So the way the bot works is, beyond using the natural language processing, we have a number of commands that you can put into place to manage what someone does, what their interaction is with the bot. So you can kind of create that, intelligence in a way, to sense, the person's asking about this. Let's create, this, this action, this command for them to map over to. Like as an example, if we're, using this leave request system, we put in a bunch of keywords here, and you can do the same. And what those keywords are going to do is essentially, when you have the Lewis app connected into the back end, it's going to parse out key values from the utterance that someone puts in, basically what they put into the bot. And that can map over to one of these things here. And you see it can go from new vacation, submit vacation, just the word vacation, leave request. Essentially all those keywords that we pull out, essentially entities that we pull out of that text that the person puts in there, we can map that to this particular command to run that particular command in the bot at that time. So just in time, processing for that, whatever we call it, so for that utterance. So someone puts something in there, Lewis app in the background runs it through the key phrase entity, pulls out the key phrases, which could be, any one of these, and then that's going to, our bot's going to read that and know what to do with it, because you've set it up to know what to do with it. In some cases, it might be a conflict, and in that case, well, it might ask you which command you want to run. But essentially, that's where we're connecting it back into it. And then there's, I know from specifically the search knowledge base app, I won't go through all this stuff because this is going to be specific to a particular application. This down here, this section is what I want to show you here. This is where we're going to be entering the information from the Lewis application that we've created. So we want to make sure we're connected over to that Lewis application that we've created. There's going to be application key and authoring key, some host name, and then entity for categories. So I mentioned previously, if you're in our bot, not this one, let me go back to this one over here. If you're in our bot, or if you're in our your Lewis app, you have your entities. So where these come from, like all these IT categories, that's coming from that JSON file that you have a link to download right here. So that's reading what you have in your particular knowledge base list, or help desk application for categories and issue types and whatnot. And it's taking that information, and it's putting it into, you know, can take it and then you can upload it into your bot dashboard over here, your, sorry, Lewis dashboard, and get that information in here. That way, you know, kind of pre-creates, you know, pre-populates all this, these different things that might come back from what a user has put into the system. So if we come back over here, you know, you've got that entity for categories. So once you create it, you come back over here and enter that entity for categories, in which case we're going to be looking at IT categories. That's what we would enter into that field there. For the rest of it, application key, authoring key, let me jump over to the sway, and you can see here, application settings and Azure resources. So these things are where you're going to find, and this is going to be in your Lewis app. This is where you're going to find those application key, which is right here, you know, this app ID, and then you've got the authoring key and the endpoint URL host name. Those, all three of those things will be in your Lewis app. So I've obfuscated those because they are, you know, unique to Crocanian, so I didn't want to expose them publicly. But if you're in your app, you're going to find them under the Manage tab. So if you go to Manage, that's where you're going to find those the Azure resources and the app keys, authoring keys that you're going to need to input into the bot over here in order for that to work. So that's where you can create that connection, and then you can leverage that Lewis application to you know, better understand what people are asking for and what they're trying to say, what they're trying to get out of the system. So, and then ultimately, once you've got the set up, over time, you're going to get back analytics and information about what's come back from what the person has entered. So we've created this bot administrator dashboard and bot analytics pages in you know, this is in our help desk tenant, our help desk demo. So if you have a bot, you can put that in there, and essentially it's going to be your you know, seeing what has come back from the bot. So interactions, okay, what was resolved, what was not resolved. So let's look at the not resolved ones. That could be clicked through, and you can see, you know, okay, we got some work to do because a lot of these, the bot interactions were not resolved to satisfaction. Maybe we need to put more information in there, and you can kind of see where, you know, people, you know, some have started over. We've done a lot of stuff with our demo tenant, so this is going to look kind of a little funky, but you know, you can see, you know, a lot of people have created tickets, a lot of people have started over, and or, you know, matched the KB articles, you know, what came up. And then you can also see how many times that bot's been interacted with, and what that status was, whether it's resolved or not resolved. And so you see over time, if you're getting more interactions that are not resolved, then you might want to go and do something different with your bot, and maybe add some more, you know, entities other than the key phrase entity. Maybe you do something a little different in the Lewis app to manage what the person, or create knowledge base articles essentially, right? So the person's not getting the information they need, then you want to go back in and make sure, okay, do I have knowledge base articles related to that? Do I have the information that the person's actually looking for? Maybe we need to put it in there, and then you can go and kind of use the analytics and use the dashboard to get you to where you need to go with the information in your knowledge base. You can see unresolved interactions, kind of what was the you know, what types of issues were coming through that were not resolved. And then you can also see what knowledge base articles were searched and triggered, or you can actually just, you see the list of articles. So you can come in here and say, okay, you know what, I need to create a new one because that particular interaction or that particular, you know, the interaction didn't result in a resolution, so we need to create an article for it. You can kind of see where those, you know, again, like over time, how these things are coming, being used. Monthly interactions, you can see how often it's being used. If people aren't using it that much, maybe you need to promote it more, you know, that kind of thing. And then you can, again, get some more information about, you know, where the ticket's coming from, how many were created by the bot, resolved interactions. So you get all this great analytics about what are people actually doing. So it's not just like set and forget and put it out there. It does require iterative feedback. It does require coming back in and saying, okay, I need to enhance it this way, enhance it that way. So it does evolve over time into a better service. And of course, you seed it with as much information and as much data in there as you want from the get-go. but your users might go in different directions that you might not have even expected as far as what they're going to put in to the system, as far as questions and the way they phrase the questions might be totally kind of crazy. But that's the whole idea behind the bot analytics and the administrative dashboard, is that you can kind of see where those things are coming from and what's getting, what's not really getting resolved, and so you can take action on that and get something available for them to consume and use and resolve on their own. So yeah, that pretty much covers what I wanted to cover today as far as the bot analytics and the bot dashboard. I'll point you, there's a couple things where it can, we have a link over to installing the bot. We have the bot manual, so you can look at that and get some more information about how to set it up, what all those commands are. If I come back over here to this, you'll see that there's quite a lot that you can do with it in the bot itself, for these different commands that come up and different things you put in there. Like for instance, if we go to, let's go to Teams. All right, so I'll pop open Teams over here. And you see we have our NITRO bot connected into our Teams app already. And we've done some, some stuff with it. And you can see that we've done leave request approvals, demos, and whatnot for all that kind of stuff. But just to kind of like give you a sense, like vacation, we're just putting in vacation. Okay, what's it going to do? Okay, it comes back with a couple of options here, commands that map to that vacation text, right? So we can even put like, I need to go on a vacation soon, and it's going to come back, the same results, same things, because we're using that word vacation. And again, like I said, it's keying off that word. It's taking this full string of text, parsing out that we're talking about vacation, mapping it back to the bot, and the bot is saying, okay, here are the two commands that have that vacation, vacation keyword. So let's bring those back, and the user can decide which one they want to do with it. And you can see there's different. We're grouping them by sites. In practice, you probably won't have multiple commands going to multiple sites, but that the vagaries of a demo, you kind of have those things in place. But you can see how that natural language processing is leveraging, using that natural language processing through the Lewis app is really helping to control what is happening here. Like if I open up all the commands here and show more commands, oh, maybe I need to do that. Oh, here we go. Search KB articles. Let's pull back that one. So now we're entering a search text, and my printer is spewing smoke and just simply not working. All right, so we got this whole phrase in there. My printer is spewing smoke and just simply not working. Okay, well, how's a bot supposed to know what to do with that? Like, you put that into a search bar. That's not going to return much for you. Put that into Google. You're not going to get a lot of relevant results. And maybe maybe a few things, maybe something about smoke alarms or whatnot. You probably get some relevance, but in the context of the knowledge base articles, you can see here what pulled back are just really two articles related to printing. Now, nowhere in these articles is that full phrase going to be in play, right? That's just simply not part of these articles. Why would we put that in there? It's just kind of nuts. But you can see through the natural language processing and the Lewis app, we're pulling back, printer. Maybe the word not working. We're getting key phrases out of this text that the person entered and trying to get relevant search results. And you can see there's a couple here. Yeah, printer is not working. So there you go. Search on printer and pull that information. So you can open up that article, and that's going to pop open the page, and that's going to, then the user can try to figure out, is this resolving my problem or not? And then they can go back and take resolution. Like, okay, no, there's nothing about my printer being on fire, so I submit a ticket. And say printer's on fire, whatever it is. And that's going to pop open a new thing. So that's commands. So there's a little difference between what the commands are doing and what the natural language processing is doing. The command is essentially saying, okay, directly, we've created this specific command to do something, which is well, yeah, so you created my ticket for me, brought back an adaptive card. And there's a lot, there's well, literally workshops and webinars we've done on the bot interaction specifically, so I won't go into it in great detail, but I wanted to show you how that natural language processing is parsing that string of text and pulling back relevant information for the user to act on, or to review those articles and take action on, either creating a ticket if they need to or whatnot. So anyway, that's yeah, so that's pretty much it. What I want to cover there with the bot interactions and how that interplays with the Lewis app. Hopefully, it wasn't too technical. I know I got into the weeds there with intents and entities and whatnot. And there's a lot of ground that can be covered there with that stuff. But if you want to learn more, there's a bunch of resources, obviously, that Microsoft offers that you can learn more about it, and you can see how our bot is interacting with that. And just look for more coming from us as far as bot interactions that do different things, or it really automate what you want to do with business processes. Yeah, that kind of covers it. And I think that's good. I also have Scott on the call here. I don't know if he had any comments or anything he wants to add in.
No, I don't see any questions, but the thing is, it's a lot to take in, and the point is to remember the usefulness of all this once you get things set up, is that it gives users ways to enter in information without having to be exact and precise in their words when they use a natural language processing to search the knowledge base or do a bot command. Also, the email sentiment analysis is really good to detect sort of annoyed customers or employees that need special attention, you could say. And the Azure Cognitive Services offers a lot of possibilities, and we here at Crow Canyon are looking to leverage as much as we can. It's actually an enormous advantage to every company, like any company that of any size, because to create an AI system or cognitive services system requires a massive amount of work and information, and you got Google doing it, Microsoft, these mega corporations. But they're through Azure Cognitive Services, they're able to bring that to the masses, you might say. That means us and you guys, to leverage what is a very powerful capability.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So it's kind of piggybacking on what the big guys are doing, and they're giving us access to this stuff, and that's why some of it's not 100% free, but for the most part, for most interactions, it will be, and you're going to be able to leverage it in your organization as well. So you don't have to go and create a whole AI infrastructure; it's already there. You're already using Office 365. You're already using Azure. So and you're
Great. Oh, what? You don't hear
yeah,
me?
exactly. Yes.
Oh, you're agreeing? Okay. I thought maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't being heard or something. It's a light entry into AI. That's what I'm saying. It's not like you have to go build robots or Alexa systems or anything like that. All you have to do, there's these elements out there, and we meld them into, infuse, as we say in the title, AI into NITRO and Teams apps and things, and then the customers can take advantage of that, right, James?
Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly right. So,
Yeah,
so if you're
we'll be
interested
doing
in,
more of this.
yeah, if you're kind of a little bit, maybe you're a little delayed, but if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. We'll set up one-on-one demos. We can look at the bot in more detail if if you're not using that already, and talk to you about how you can leverage that for your business process automation needs. But yeah, feel free to reach out. We're always here, always willing, open for feedback and questions and whatnot. But otherwise, I'll return the last 10 minutes of the hour to you guys, and appreciate your time, and hope you have a great day.
Okay, thank you, James. Goodbye.
Bye.